So I wanted to go over some aspects of trapping and how to use them, how to carve them, how they're made at least. This is a figure 4 deadfall trap. Um, it's a very easy to use, easy to make, common trap. There may be better ones out there, but this one, if you're going to learn one trap, this is going to be the one to start with, and what most people do start with, because it just works. It's easy to do. There's one very similar to it called the Paiute Deadfall trap that utilizes some cordage as well. But I wanted to go over some aspects of this particular trap setup and how it should be used. This is actually a set that I carved a few weeks ago. I like to have one made up. The whole thing, this basically is almost all the stick that you need to make a figure 4 trap. You can have it broken down and in the side of a backpack with you all the time if you need to. And they're just kind of fun to set up on occasion when you're in the right spot. So this one right here, the figure 4 trap consists of really 4 parts when you include the weight, which is one of the most important parts, obviously, and needs to be considered well. There's the top piece, the trigger, and the post here. And the trigger has got I put a little fork in the end of mine because it was easy to do with. This is all made out of ocean spray, which has got a pithy center, so the fork was easy to make in it. The back of it has got a notch that keys into this chisel point on the end of your top piece, which is supporting the weight, which has a notch in it, which is on the chisel point of the top central post. And then, very importantly, the post has got a 90-degree angle cut into it. I did it on both sides, so you're able to see it on your side as well. But there's no bark right there because I put a flat face on it there, and there's a flat face on it facing the weight as well. So they come together with a 90-degree angle that the notch on here is able to hook onto. That's how you're going to adjust the sensitivity of the trap, is by how well you're hooked onto that notch, because it can be on there fairly good like I have it, and it's still not trapping the trigger. And if it's a very small animal, they don't have a whole lot of weight or strength to them to do that. But so you can see I actually knocked our tender little morsel of gravel out of there, and it still didn't go off. Meaning, our squirrel would have made off with his food, and we wouldn't have made off with the squirrel. Some other things I want to talk about this trap and why it's not really ideally set up. I wanted to set it up to show some common examples of what you might do incorrectly so that it can be done properly. This angle inside of here is really too open, probably about a 60 or 65 degree angle. And when you have an angle that's tall like this one here, your weight is going to start falling kind of slow and then speed up as it comes closer to the ground, because it's somewhat supported by the ground that it's sitting on. You want it to be like 45 degrees or tighter, so that when it comes down, it starts moving fast. It doesn't have as far to fall, but it's doing it quickly, and that doesn't give your critter quite so much time to get out of the way. Another thing about it is as this falls forward, as it falls down, it's also going to be moving forward, and the end of it is going to end up around here, which means it's probably going to fall on all the parts of our trap. And if it does that, it's going to be holding the weight up off the ground an inch, possibly. If there's 2 of these stacked on top of each other and it rests on top of it, it's going to keep it from clapping flat right on the ground, which is really important. In order to have that occur where it's clapping flat on the ground, you want your trap to be more or less out of the way. You want to have a nice flat surface. If you have 2 flat rocks on top of each other, then bam, you're great. That's the optimal setup. But you don't want to have any stones or anything like these guys that are anywhere nearing the size of the game you're trying to catch underneath there, because they're going to hold the weight up. You also don't want any high points or voids underneath your weight. So this weight here isn't that great, because there's a void in here that's almost an inch deep. And if that was if we were trying to catch something say the size of a chipmunk or something, he probably wouldn't be killed right away, if at all, and might have a real torturous time underneath there. Not to mention you may not capture him or her. So flat on the bottom here, flat on the ground, and an angle something more like that, bam, than this, where it's going to take twice as long to get to what its intended goal is. Ideally, the tip of your stick here is baited kind of well. Like you might actually even tie it on if you have the cord or the string available. So they have to work it to get it off, because then they're more likely to trigger it. Let's see, what else do we want to do? I tend to like to have this is obviously shaped like a 4, that's why it's called a figure 4. I like to have this as vertical as I can get it, and you can actually kind of stab this into the ground. This is just in a little depression here, but and that makes setting it a little bit easier, but setting the trap isn't terribly hard to do anyway. Another thing that I like about this particular the only thing I like about this particular weight is it's got a hinge on the bottom of it. It's got a long flat side. That's something that you'll find a lot when you're working with random stones. Is you want not only a flat side along here, but you want a flat edge along there, so that it's not teetering one way or the other when it wants to fall, and that makes setting it up a lot more stable. So that's one of the great things about a split log, I guess, is you have that hinge. Other than that, this log, if it was twice as long, we would probably get the angle that we wanted. It's rotten and it's pretty lightweight. You want your weight to be at least 5 times heavier than the game that you're trying to kill with it. So this guy here is kind of spongy, and I'm using it just for demonstration purposes, but something like this you do not want to use for trapping. It might be fun for, goofing off in your backyard or your living room floor or something like that when you're practicing traps, but don't attempt to do any actual trapping with it. Let's see if there's anything else. Where you want to set up a trap, I've just got it kind of set off on the side of my camp right now. This is not a good place for setting up this trap. However, I'm underneath a big leaf maple tree, and I'm seeing all of these shells from the maple seeds that have been opened up. That's a piece of gravel there, but there's the whole ground is littered with them here. So apparently the chipmunks or the squirrels or something, or the birds, have been opening up the little wings and getting the seed out from them. So that's another food source here. There's a bunch of hazels uphill of me here, hazelnuts. That's a good food source. That indicates that there should be quite a few chipmunks and squirrels here. There isn't, unfortunately. I've had a real difficult time finding any tracks, droppings, game trails of any kind of wildlife here, and I think it has something to do with them using herbicides up above. There's quite a bit of vegetation that's just been denuded up there, and I hear a lot of birds. I've heard one squirrel though since I've been here. I probably pulled in about 7 o'clock last night, and only one squirrel chatter, and there's plenty of squirrel food here. So when you're deciding what you want to bait your trap with here, ideally it's somewhat aromatic, and it's something that's not widely available in that location at that time. The reason being is, like, say if I wanted to use some of these maple seeds and it was during the season when they were dropping, well, they're everywhere. Why would an animal be attracted to this particular one if there's millions all over the place? Particularly, this trap is probably going to have some amount of human scent on it. So they're gonna be wary of that and avoid it. One way that you can avoid having your scent on it is wash your hands really well before constructing the trap. Hold the trap itself, the components of it, in the smoke. Hold your hands in the smoke of your campfire. If you don't have soap and water, you can actually use wood ashes to remove the scent on your hands. But you want to remove the scent as much as possible, and you don't want to make a big impact on the area that you're setting it up in any more than necessary as well. You don't want everything to be just keyed into, oh, somebody's been here recently. If you do, wait 2 or 3 days before you come back on the trap, because it might take that long for kind of settle out and the animals realize that you're not around all the time. And you want to set it up in a place where your game is. And you want to go to places where they frequent. Game trails are the best places for that. Just like a highway and road system for people, game trails are different sizes depending on their frequency of use and the size of the animals using them. So if you're looking for a squirrel, while they do frequent some of the larger paths, they're going to be a lot more common on the paths that are just big enough for a squirrel to run through. And you got to be pretty keen-eyed for those places. But oftentimes those trails will converge, which means you're going to get twice as much traffic on it. If you can identify any kind of bottleneck on that trail, particularly if that trail is leading from shelter to food or shelter to water or something along that, where they have to travel it multiple times a day, then you're going to be identifying spaces that are more likely to catch game in your next meal. So the way a figure 4 trap works is this little notch here gets knocked off when the bait here is taken by the critter that you're trying to get. So here's our critter, my little maple stick here, and there you go. We've got the weight come down. This did a little bit better than the last time I set it up, but you can see that it did fall on two of the components of the trap, and they are overlapped, meaning if this was a totally flat surface, this whole trap would be this far off the ground, 3/4 of an inch or so, which, a mouse is only 3/4 of an inch tall. So if you were trying to catch mouse,